Hello. So, for today, what I'd like to explore here is, well, I'm going to give a brief bit of context. From it had been sitting with me kind of funny about yesterday, about the way that there was a thing that I was excited about that I kept circling, and like you can see the video from yesterday, talking about the sin of believing in sin, and there is for me an exciting idea there that I sort of sat with the fact that I spent maybe half an hour looping over the same phrasing, the same concept structure, and I didn't feel like I nailed what I was trying to say. There's a kind of discomfort with that about, okay, if I'm not, if I'm, if I'm feeling dissatisfied with my own articulation, with how I'm showing up, what's actually going on there? Right? I can have a hard time articulating something, and it's fine. So if I'm bothered by it and I'm having this sense of it not conveying well, what's actually going on? What's the core going on there? So I was feeling into it. I realized that um, there's this sort of energetic puzzle I experience over and over again about it's as though there are two approaches, two orientations to my energy levels. Um, one one approach uh, is this, oh, here's this whole ideascape. Here's this thing that I see is really interesting. I want to share this. I want to describe this. Oh, I see this opportunity. And there's, for me, a lot of excitement in sharing. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy writing. I enjoy, like, it's like I've got this library in my mind that just presents stuff. And there's such a delight for me to be able to share that with people. When I find something that I find really exciting, there's this, hey, let me show you this. This is really cool. Um, It's especially strong. This is where it can very readily feed into the rescuer corner of Karpmann's triangle, of the victim triangle. Um, this can get especially energetic for me when I see someone struggling with something that I know a solution for. like, um, it's on the level of I see somebody who's really struggling with these health problems of scurvy, and like, hey, did you know that like limes and oranges will just cure that for you? And they're going to taste super good when you try them. I might burn a little bit, but like it'll totally fix the issue. and there's for me this excitement about you could live an awesome life. Here's the piece of information you may have been missing. If you didn't have this information, bam, maybe this is the thing that you've been waiting for. Um, it's slippery. This is part of the challenge that I keep running into with this side, with this kind of energy of um, it's very easy for me to slip into wanting to make others' lives better as though I have power they don't. Um, and yeah, I can imagine it sounding a little strange if like there's a place from which um, I can feel very clearly what it means to be of support to other people, to be compassionate, to be caring in ways that don't imply by the actions or the interaction um, that they are incapable without infantilizing them. There's totally a place to do that from. I often experience that now. That a lot of my habits slide into, hey, look, I know this, you don't. My solution would work if you would just listen to me. Right? So please pay attention. There's this like sort of energy to it. Like, look, I know what I'm talking about. You don't know what you are, you don't understand this domain. I do. Listen to me. Take in what I have to say. Okay, that energy comes so readily to me. I have guesses as to why. I think it's just part of um, the paradigm that our culture has for what it means to teach and what it means to demonstrate. Um, but for me in particular, It also gives me a way of not having to look at my own discomforts or my own inner work. And this is both because if I'm invested in fixing other people, like they're broken and I need to fix them, and I have the power to fix them, and they don't have the power to fix themselves. Um, if I'm invested in that, it's very easy for me to keep myself distracted from uncomfortable feelings in myself and avoid seeing truths that my ego doesn't want me to see. Um, and much more blatantly and directly, if the thing that I am looking at in the other person is actually, like maybe they don't have a problem at all, but it looks like a problem to me because it's an expression of something in myself I don't have approval for. This is the mechanism of projection. Like if I can't stand something about myself, um, and I am dealing with it by distracting myself from it, then when I see that attribute appearing in others, it's very easy for me to judge and condemn and reject that attribute in other people. So if I'm coming into interacting with others with I've got tools that can fix your problem, let me fix it for you. That fixing can be how I interface with the attempt to reject that part of them, which is no longer dialoguing with whether or not there's actually a problem for them. And maybe there is, but the whole tone of the interaction is going to come with this tone of judgment and rescuing. This is because of the whole thing that happened and is still going on. I'm actually a little out of touch with how much is going on with this. But in the United States, the whole fervor around Black Lives Matter, the concern about white saviorism is an example of this mechanism. Right? It's like the thing that is the thing being feared there is the rescuing mechanism. So in this sense of rescuing, like rescuing as one of the corners of the drama triangle, one of the corners of Karpmann's triangle. So there is, for me, this, so this energetic distraction, a way of not having to pay attention. So that's on that. So that's the energetic mechanism on one side. I see this this love of information and this. How does this work? And these pieces can come together here, and this is amazing. Look at this. Like my mind, I feel like I want to emphasize something here. For particularly for those who may not be as sensitive to the energetics behind what's being said. When I'm commenting on, my mind is so brilliant. Like what I mean by that is this sense of like, I find myself in this body and with this mind and with this heart going around in this world, and this mind is such a gift. And I didn't build it, I didn't design it, I used it, but it also kind of told me how to use it. So like, this is an amazing gift, an amazing blessing. This is not about how amazing I am. It's about, oh wow, it feels to me a little bit like somebody noticing that they're really tall. That's a gift. I mean, it can be a gift. Somebody who's really tall and then is able to use that really well for things like basketball, or being able to reach tall shelves, or being able to protect the people they love by being intimidating and towering over, and then using that as a way of caring for the people that they love. Like that's a gift. In that sense, height is a gift. Also, they had nothing to do with it. It was given to them. It was quite literally a gift. So, okay, so in that sense, I really enjoy the use of this brilliant mind in the way that it just provides me this vast, vast library and this beautiful way of interconnecting all kinds of information. And it rapidly absorbs information and organizes it in beautiful ways. And then that wants to come through me, and it feels like such a wonderful blessing to be part of that process, to get to experience that, and then to watch the delight happen as like I give a piece of information and it lights up someone's life. Or just share something and people go, wow, that's fascinating. It's like, yeah, it is. It's fascinating, isn't it? Isn't this wonderful? So there's a lot of excitement and energy on this side. And then there's this other dimension that has to do with the treasure of slowing down, being really in touch with. Like, in our culture, probably the easiest way for most people to get in touch with this is through loss and grief and the recognition of death and mortality. And those can work on me too, quite well. They work a little differently. So my background and my relationship with death is quite a bit different than most people's. But, but the important part there is something like a surrendering to truth, a willingness to let go, a recognition of what actually matters. There's something that's very sweet and real about that. Absolutely real. The kind of space of just feeling into, I've been a jerk in these ways. Like reflecting on what was going on yesterday. I think a chunk of it is that I was getting excited about these ideas and I lost track of the fact that the whole point of this, the whole point of me showing up with these live streams is to be in connection as I show up holding these frequencies. And there's like a temptation there to go, yeah, I screwed up, but there's a way of like doing that is distracting myself from the point. This isn't a matter of me screwing up. It's a matter of recognizing, oh, this is a growth edge for me, where I want to be in connection. I want to be present and share the things I'm really excited about. That these two, they're not inherently in contradiction, but there's some inclination towards that, some sort of tendency of separation. So there's something about recognizing the pain that reveals, the pain that reveals is operating in me. And recognizing something about how yesterday I was getting so excited about the ideas and the logic, and I was looping on them, and I couldn't notice the way in which the loopiness was coming from a space of a kind of anxiety. Like, I need to be able to express this. Why aren't I expressing this well? Well, here's a thought about why that's okay. I'm still uncomfortable, but I think I can express it. Let me try a little bit harder. That whole energy coming from a kind of discomfort that I was then leaning towards, let me share information rather than let me be with my discomfort. I can be with my discomfort. That's vulnerable. It can be embarrassing. It's not very exultant to the ego. And I do care for this ego. This ego does some beautiful things for me. I don't mean to razz on the ego here. Um, for all that I seem to have stepped onto the spirituality train, there's still a lot of things in the spiritual world that strike me as I think I'll just say wrong. They are mistaken. They are incorrect. And I can see why there's such a condemnation of the ego. Because there is a very important way in which the ego is the only thing that's in the way of clarity and love, kindness, openness. But that's sort of there's a confusion there, because the ego is also what lets us be here at all as individuals. So to the extent that I want to pretend that there's a goal, what I view there being a goal of is educating, shaping the ego so that it can work well with spiritual truths. And I think that's actually much more helpful than is trying to kill the ego. Because who finds it important to try to kill the ego? Clearly there's something wrong with the ego and we must fix it because God messed up. Um, not only did God mess up, but like there is no God, right? So this is just the universe being an unconscious, unthinking blah, and I'm smarter than the universe. Like, okay, I see. Um, that's going to be ongoingly uncomfortable. That's just a structural thing there. So the thing is that um, I find I can get in touch with the heartfelt honesty a lot more readily from a kind of slowing down. In the write-up that I gave for, here's some of the ideas, prompts that I'm using as I'm coming into this live stream. So mentioning how I came out of some of my experiences in Mexico about last month in November, um, like looking around going, okay, heart, heart, sensation of the heart. That was actually much more the point, is that I can actually pay attention to these sensations. I don't have to get sucked into thought. I can be with the heart. It's literally in the middle of the chest. There's like something I would want to call a compass there, a compass of mattering, a compass of connection, right here. And then I want to have mental handles so that I can relate the mind, relate the mental part of the ego, back to this recognition, the importance down here. And the main one, which is like the title that I gave this video, people way greater ideas, people much greater than ideas. One of the ways this expressed is, oh, people matter more than ideas. Part of the point of that expression is, well, that's an idea. What is the thing that's focusing on? It's not about shame. It's not about a should. It's not making an assertion about policies. It's also not even making a claim about what clear thinking looks like. It's a reminder, primarily for me, like entirely for me, really. I don't mean this as a teaching to give people, although I think I've heard similar things, and I think it could be converted into a kind of teaching. But I think the real teaching here, to the extent that this extends beyond me and that I have something to offer, is actually in what I can embody that is the truth that that points at. And then emphasize that, show up as it, and then go, okay, well, this is what matters, and here's what I think about it. So the thing for me there is, I very easily get into trying to do everything with my mind because it's such a gift, because it's so powerful. This mind does so much, so fast. So if I'm scared, it's very easy for me to turn to the mind and say, hey, mind, could you take care of this? I've done that through a lot of my life, most of my life. I tried to live almost everything through my head. I've worked a whole lot on embodiment, but the embodiment has been through the head. How do I embody? Okay, well, I can focus on the sensations of my body in this way, and then relate this to my models of how the biology works. And okay, models of biology create some confliction now, but I borrow some things from like Chinese medicine and energetics, because that references experience. And here's this whole theory. And I think I'm very quickly living in these thought bubbles. I'm not living in the flesh. One of my first, most intense revelations in Mexico was like going through a process. And I can describe this process in some detail. I don't want to right now, but I'll mention that the main context for going to Mexico is working with Bufo, which is the most natural, I think, by which I mean most naturally occurring form of 5-MeO-DMT, which is an intensely powerful psychedelic, immensely powerful and very clean. It just goes through the system very quickly. The whole experience takes maybe 40 minutes. And the body fully metabolizes it. It has very few contraindications. There are a few, but they're very, very few because this is a naturally occurring thing in the body. So I'm told. And some friends were putting together some friends who I have a lot of trust in and do some really high integrity work with shamanic practices. We're putting together a 2-week shamanic container focused on working with that substance and a lot of meditation. So going through that event, did a total of 9 experiences with that, like 9 in a row, which is like it was. I want to say it's different, but it's like, oh wow, it's not different. It's really the same. It's the same thing I'm always experiencing. I just forget. I very often forget, and it's not a mental forgetting. It's something deeper. So coming down from the first experience of that, there's this absolutely vivid thing that became super clear. Oh, our minds can understand mortality, and our bodies get scared. If the way that we deal with that is by distracting our minds from that, the body is still scared. And everything, every thought that is associated with death in that way is going to react to the body's fear. Because of this, being in the body, really being here, like choosing to die. It's choosing to be in that which dies. So there's an emotional, energetic move there that's very, very powerful for me. Like my experience of it is very, very powerful. And I find this a little bit surprising. There's an aspect of surprise about it for me in that I don't know how my experience differs from others if it does, because until my 30s, I really thought I was just going to live forever. Or if not forever, then at least for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. And so, like, actually believing that and having very clear reasons why that was true. I think, actually, as I reflect on it, I think part of what was going on there is a part of me suspected that there was something wrong with the logic, and I was adamantly ignoring that. So I think in a way that my experiences actually have a symmetry with, or an analog with everybody else's, a way in which I was ignoring the reality of death. I'm just feeling into that and noticing, oh, okay. I think there are pieces of my attention that I was using to fight the full recognition of what all of this meant, which is why it occurred to me in my 30s. Oh, actually, there's a relevant, significant chance that I am just going to die like everybody else. There's something about a move that feels a lot like grieving in me, that is about sinking down into the reality of this moment. It's like there's some mental tricks I can do about, wow, this is amazing, I'm experiencing, and this has been one of my main handles since coming back from Mexico. But there's a move that is much more sober. It's not about, whoa, but it has more to do with, sometimes the truth really sucks. Where in me is the willingness to look even at that? It's thorough in my mind, but facing it isn't in my mind. The mind is something like a computer that answers questions. It does computations, it runs programs. It, it, it can't be where the experience comes from. The experience is here, right here. So really grounding in the body, really being here, really fully experiencing this. Doing that, there's a massive slowing down. So that's this other side, this willingness to feel sorrow. this willingness to grieve, this right here. People matter more than ideas. That's the kind of direction this is pointing at. It's not about necessarily confronting death. Death is just a very good anchor for this recognition. It's actually pointing out something about when I'm interacting with people, I can get very excited. Here's this concept, here's this idea, here's this thing that I want to share. Isn't this cool? And when I'm saying that, there's excitement. The excitement and my attention is mostly focused on the idea. And yes, on the sharing, but the sharing isn't by default in touch with the experience of the other person. And I find it particularly frustrating. It's like an interesting reflection on my own lived experience. I find it particularly frustrating when someone responds with, I don't know, is that true? It's like, why are you resisting this? Here's the reasons it's true. Here's this thing. Here, pay attention to this. Isn't this cool? Because part of what I'm looking for is the reflection in the other person of the experience of it being cool or profound or sometimes scary. Sometimes what I want to share is, here's this thought experiment. Isn't this freaky? And I want to see the person kind of disturbed. And I'm looking for it. Let me get this response from this person. There's emphasis, let me get this response from this person. Let me pull it out of them. Let me manipulate them into having this response. I'm not conscious of that level when I'm really getting into it, but it's totally there. There's this this insistence on needing to express at. Part of the point of it is me recognizing, as fun as all of this stuff with the mind is, and as beautiful as these mental structures can be, everything that matters is in truth. Everything. It's in the flesh. Any of these ideas that aren't anchored directly to the lived experience and the lived connection don't matter. They're spinning ideas. And they actually create suffering because my guess is, because they're distancing from the pain that matters, from really being in touch with the fact that everyone, by default, everyone I love is going to die. It's not something I need to mentally focus on and obsess about. But if my way of living my life doesn't live that truth, then I am disconnected from truth to the best of my ability to understand it. So what am I connected to instead? Usually distraction. Distraction through obsession with ideas, distraction through trying to impose these ideas on others and manipulate others to have certain kinds of responses. What if I'm just with what's true? Can't do that with the mind. The mind isn't well equipped to do that, and the mind creates these loop-de-loops of distraction. So it has to come from something else. And here I want to say something like, oh, it comes from love. It comes from the heart. The reason I want to give those kinds of descriptions, in part because there's all these cultural echoes. We've had this this idea of love being the most powerful force. Like everything is love. It all grounds in love. Everything is made of love. These ideas are in Western culture predominantly because of Christianity. John Vervaeke gives a beautiful description of this whole arc, that these ideas may have existed before, but they weren't part of a cultural foundation of what spirituality even means before Christianity, best as we can tell, as far as I know. So, like if yeah, I mean there are equivalent versions that'll show up. I don't mean to say Christianity invented love in the cosmic sense, but I mean that the cultural focus on it in the West didn't appear until Christianity. There's something similar that goes on with the East in terms of the ages of Buddhism. The original form of Buddhism wasn't emphasizing love basically at all. As far as I could tell, as much as I'm remembering, it's been a while since I dug into a lot of the Buddhist stuff, but I dug pretty deep. I was approximately Buddhist for a while. I say approximately because I was interested in the self-development side rather than the belief system for the most part. But the original Theravada Buddhism didn't put a lot of emphasis on love and compassion. That actually came with Mahayana Buddhism, which is like, approximately speaking, a second wave. It was an attempt. Mahayana means the great vessel or the large boat, and they would often disparagingly refer to Theravada. I forget what Theravada translates as, but as Hinayana, the tiny vessel. Like that's only for the privileged few. I mean, and it's like you're not actually caring for everybody. You're being egoic. You're priding yourself in all of this. We want the large vessel that can carry everyone. Mahayana Buddhism is where we get the idea of the bodhisattva from, the person who forsakes complete enlightenment and escape from the karmic cycle of death and rebirth in order to bring their understanding of how to get to the brink to everyone else. All beings. For all beings. So that whole arc, I want to emphasize that there's, like, I understand this. I understand that this happens. But there's still something very important about, why am I doing this? Why am I going on that? I think I was feeling a little uncomfortable, and I was going into, here's this whole arc of history. That's cool, because even in that case, it didn't feel like I was trying to change, but I think I was distracting myself a little bit. That's funny. Yeah, I think the core of the discomfort is that I'm wanting to emphasize that I'm not blindly believing in a doctrine that uses the word love and just going, that feels good, so I'm going to believe it. And I think I was concerned about that perception, and I wanted to control the perception of me. Yeah, so acknowledging that and setting that aside now. When I say that love or the heart is the thing that I find important to get in touch with, I'm talking about there actually being a sensation that I can anchor in my chest. I feel it in the chest, but it also rings throughout my whole body. It has to do with how am I relating to the person I'm interacting with, or to the people I'm interacting with. Can I feel them? Am I in tune with them? And more importantly, am I more interested in the nature of the connection between me and them than I am in saying or sharing my idea? If I'm not, that means I'm spinning away from something. It means that there's some sort of way that I'm abandoning myself. I'm not being fully present. I'm not fully here. I'm not really living my life, and I'm not being kind to me. There's also this way in which I'm kind of missing out on something. All of the pleasure and beauty and joy in life, for me, is coming from the lived moment. And a lot of that is in connection with others. As long as I'm going to believe in others, like, there you are, and here I am. And what a mystery. What is it actually like to be you? That always matters more. I just sometimes forget. I think I forget. I'm imagining, this is my mental model. It feels very closely in connection with what's going on in my body. It feels in connection with, or it's, I lost track. I went into too many tangents too quickly. Which is a subtle example of the same thing. A subtle example of the same thing. Yeah, I lost track of the thought structure there. It's starting to spin too quickly. There's something very calming and very real about seriously prioritizing being here, not as a mental thing, at most to have the mind pointing back at the experience, an actual embodied thing. What am I trying to get away from? Not figuring it out, not asking the mind, but, oh, my mind is spinning. I'm teaching. Right? I actually think there's it's perfectly fine for me to teach, but why I'm teaching matters infinitely more than what I'm teaching. Why I am teaching, why I am sharing. That is about what is lived in my body. That has more to do with what is real and what's connective and what will transmit at an implicit level than anything I have to say. There is no idea that is so important that it being transmitted by any means makes sense. Because people matter more than ideas. People always matter more than ideas. And this is, I wanted to emphasize this, to talk about this, in large part to anchor it more deeply in myself. I realized that I've been, like over the last couple of days, I actually noticed as I was walking around, I seem to be in my head a lot more. I'm thinking these thoughts. I'm not as in touch with how important it is for me to just live my life rather than trying to do something that will affect a bunch of people. But I noticed myself slipping away from keeping my attention on it, which is often a sign that I'm trying to keep my attention on it from mental programs. So it wasn't grounding in my body. So, yeah, and then noticing the way that I sort of spun out yesterday. Like, okay, slipping on something here. What's the thing I need to emphasize? Not just, I need to focus on me, because that's more of the same idea. And there's a way where talking that way to myself is unkind. What is boundlessly kind to myself? And noticing all of these little places in my body, in my energy, in my heart. There's a bit of tension, a bit of efforting, a bit of pain, and noticing I can slow down, I can breathe, and I can be with that, by which I mean bring my conscious awareness into those experiences. Then I feel relief. Sort of like holding a child, holding a toddler that's upset. In my clearest moments, I don't know my absolute clearest moments, but in some of my clearest moments, I will feel as though, this is pulling from a bit of Renaissance lore in terms of the framework. Fearing perception again. Let me not control the perception. Sometimes in some of my clearest moments, I feel like I am an angel here to take care of this mortal and to do God's work. Take that as a metaphor. I find a lot of the language about God to be helpful. So there's for me a desire to not be misunderstood. I'm not trying to assert a religious frame. But I do think that religious frame came about because of a good reason. And this is part of the good reason. I'm looking at it going, oh, yeah, there's actually an experience like the light of consciousness is me. And who am I? Oh, I don't have the impression that I am everything all the time. I can remember the thought, but my lived experience is, when I remember to pay attention, I am the light of the consciousness. But not the light of consciousness over there. I can understand how if I were seeing clearly, I would understand that. So I still have this individuated nature, but I am this light. shining through these eyes, feeling through this skin. Who am I? Some sort of light assigned to take care of this animal. I can actually care for it. Having that kind of relationship with myself feels like what kindness really is. Doing that, being really with this animal, as it recognizes death, I'm going to die. Maybe, but it's okay. Really being with that. Being willing to be with the scared child. So this whole thing is in some sense me trying to fuse these two sides, the excitement and the stillness. I actually feel a lot of resolution in my body from this. So you had to watch me over the last 40 minutes actively trying to alchemize something via the interaction and trying to be present, but not by efforting, not by trying to have an effect, but by being here. So if you watched all the way through, thank you for listening. Thank you for witnessing.